Welcome back to another episode of Q&A with the Doc. I'm Dr. John Edwards, a chiropractor in Cape Coral at Mama's Chiropractic Clinic. I'm going to answer a couple questions that I've had throughout the week. Talk to you about three major things that came up. The first is measuring success for interventions for kids on the autism spectrum. Second will be, I have some patients who are gluten-free and dairy-free, and they're asking me about smoothies, what they can do for substitutes, so I've got some ideas for you there. And finally, we'll be talking about a new study come out about vitamin deficiency in kids and what may be contributing to that and what we might be able to do about it. Broadcasting to you live from Ada's Natural Market. Of course, on cue, there's our smoothie machine. I'm here with my beautiful fiance, Erica Sharp, so every once in a while you'll probably hear her chime in some really interesting tidbits. I went a little casual today. Usually I have a collared shirt on, but it's the Dave Matthews Band is in Miami, and my future sister-in-law and her boyfriend came through town, dropped their doggies off for us to doggy sit. And I decided to wear this shirt in their honor this weekend. Erica was just reading through the newspaper and told me that at McDonald's, you now have the opportunity to get your children checked for autism, which I think is kind of an interesting combination of some things. One is there's awareness of the fact that autism spectrum disorder is a growing diagnosis in our kids, and they're doing screenings for infants, 6 months to 5 years? Is that what you just read? 18 months. Okay.
And it's a monthly thing.
It's something that they're doing every month down here in conjunction with Ronald McDonald House and one of the medical centers. And one of the things that, as we start developing the technology to get better at figuring out what's going on with the kids who are on the spectrum, we needed instruments to start measuring the success of those interventions. Because a lot of the instruments in the last 10 years have been geared towards helping to identify whether or not the child had the issue. And I hate labeling kids. It doesn't fit with how I see health and how all that works together. But it is helpful sometimes to have an understanding of what's going on so we can, I don't even know if it changes what I do with the adjusting so much. Because all we're trying to do is get the child to have a nervous system that's functioning to the best of their ability. But I know that there are other things that do work, like we've had measured success with nutritional interventions and understanding how, although it's controversial, the role of vaccination in this. So the more people, especially in mainstream, who are starting to understand that this is something that should be measured, are starting to come out and say, hey, we can at least do the screening for it. But doing the screening for something and actually measuring progress can be two very, very different things. For instance, if you're going to measure the effectiveness of something like, let's say cardiac rehab, measuring someone's blood pressure isn't necessarily the best tool that you would use to tell whether or not somebody is getting better with their heart rate. Because you have other things like the stroke volume that's being produced, the resistance in the arteries tells you about the blood pressure. But as they get more fit, their heart rate's going to start coming down. And if they're on a stress test, might be one kind of indication for how well their body's doing. But there's other variables to look at, like are they starting to lose weight? Are they starting to gain lean muscle mass? Are you just tweaking out because you're on coffee? What's going on, dear? Oh, yeah. People are getting some mean smoothies over there. It's fantastic. Anyway, so with the invention of more and better tools for screening, there have been some researchers who have developed better and better tools for measuring whether or not an intervention has been successful. I want to cover a couple of those real quick because I was asked by a patient. I have, as someone who has a practice where I see a lot of kids, it's just a matter of statistics that I'm going to see kids who are on the spectrum. And as a chiropractor, I have my technique measurements for understanding whether or not their nervous system is functioning well, but to tell whether or not the specific question was, with this particular child's activity level, how do we know if we're having improvements with the adjustments, if that's making that thing better? I mean, the big first answer to that is that it doesn't matter. The key is being able to have a nerve system that's free from interference, and his body's going to work at 100%, whatever that 100% is. But we're curious from a research perspective about treatment and effect. And I was looking up some of the more widely accepted instruments in the behavioral health professions on being able to measure autism spectrum disorder. And I want to read over a couple of those really quick. There were 3 that were highlighted in an article out of the UK. It was called Measuring Developmental Progress of Children with Autism Spectrum Disorder on School Entry Using Parent Report. That article was published in Autism in March of 2004, and in the abstract, they looked at 3 different scales. The first was called the Vineland Adaptive Behavior Scale Screener, and there's now an updated version of that. There is the Social Communication Questionnaire, which used to be called the Autism Communication Questionnaire, and finally the Autism Treatment Evaluation Checklist. They measured the ability to give a questionnaire to parents at home and compared them to the success rates of figuring out the change in behavior based off of those 3 screenings. And I looked at those 3 screenings and tried to figure out, okay, is this something that I can use in my practice? First one I went to was the Vineland Adaptive Behavior Scale Screener, and I found that on Pearson, which is a medical products distribution company. They own the copyright to the Vineland Adaptive Behavior Scale 2nd edition, Vineland number 2. The product summary gives you an overview that says, the leading instrument for supporting the diagnosis of intellectual and developmental disabilities now includes these forms: survey interview, parent/caregiver rating, teacher rating, and expanded interview. The benefits were that it addresses today's special needs populations, such as individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, autism spectrum disorder, and ADHD. It's updated with new norms, expanded age range, and improved items, useful for diagnosis, qualification for special programs, progress reporting, program and treatment planning, and research. It offers both respected semi-structured interview format, which focuses discussion and gathers in-depth information, and also offers convenient rating forms. Now, when you have those kinds of things, it's a 5-domain and multiple subdomains are measured with this. I was honing in specifically with my patient's question about motor skills, fine and gross. As I was scrolling down and seeing things like new impressive features, I knew that this thing was for sale. And so then I was kind of curious about, okay, well, how much do I have to pay in order to get these forms? I scroll down a little bit further. It comes in a shiny booklet. It has training CDs. I'm going, all right, so this is going to be a package deal. The hand scoring materials to get a set of 10 of all of these, including the manuals and all that, is $164.75. So I'm thinking about the schools that are out there using these kinds of forms. Behavioral therapists, etc., are probably integrating the cost of these into the cost for treating each one of these children. If you have the Vineland 2 survey forms and expanded form starter kit, that is $333. The Vineland 2 complete starter kit that includes survey forms, expanded form, and teacher rating form, includes all the components in each individual starter kit, that's $398. Not outside of my price range necessarily, but they have the Vineland 2 Assist starter kits. It has all the survey forms, expanded form, and teacher rating forms. The starter kit with something they call Assist, that's over $1,000. Obviously, something that would be good for a healthcare practitioner who focuses in on this kind of diagnosis. And I guess the major reason in today's society that a diagnosis is useful is because it then allows you to, now that you have a labeled child, to apply for certain types of assistance when it comes to educational programs and for healthcare assistance, because honestly these kids do need some more help. So that's the cost for that one. And I went, okay, that was a little bit higher than I was expecting to just find a form on Google. The second one that I looked up was the social communication questionnaire. It's on the Western Psychological Services. Test with confidence is their byline. The SCQ is a cost-effective way to screen for autism spectrum disorders. Scroll down for pricing information. Also gives you a nice picture of the booklet. Has some suggested related products. And at a glance, the purpose is that it offers a quick, easy, and inexpensive way to routinely screen for autism spectrum disorders. The ages in grade over 4 years, the mental age over 2. Administration time, this only takes about 10 minutes. Format is a parent questionnaire with 40 yes or no items. It also has current and lifetime forms and scores total score with cutoff points. It gives you the authors, who are Rutler, Bailey, and Lord. Previously known as the Autism Screening Questionnaire, this brief instrument helps evaluate communication skills and social functioning in children who may have autism or autism spectrum disorders. It can be completed by a parent or other primary caregiver in less than 10 minutes. It's a cost-effective way to determine whether an individual should be referred for a complete diagnostic evaluation. Scrolling down, it actually gives you some test sample forms in a PDF version for both the current form and the lifetime form. For those items, the kit that includes 20 current AutoScore forms and 20 lifetime AutoScore forms, plus a manual, is $115. Packages of 20 for the current AutoScore form are $37, so that is very affordable. $58 for the manual, and they also have it in Spanish. It was interesting because in the last CDC evaluation of autism spectrum disorders that showed the big jump into 1 in 88 boys, they attributed some of that to a diagnosis among both Hispanic and African American populations, where those areas they felt had previously been unreported. So I really like the idea that they're starting to branch out into the Spanish language versions of these. You also have computerized components. You can use it on a Windows-based, Windows 7, Vista, XP. If you're running a Mac, your SOL, that's $199 to run that on your computer. Again, in this day of information age and sharing, I was kind of hoping for a web-based version or something that was going to be free to access. Interestingly enough, when I went to find an article that was one of the assessing articles for one of those instruments, I wanted to get 24-hour access to that journal, and journal access was going to cost me $35 for the day. But I get full access for 24 hours. I don't know, maybe it's just because I think that we live in an information age, and I have a hard time with the concept of charging for things that you could get into a library. I understand that things cost bandwidth and that journals need publications, that there should be some form of support, but sometimes I feel like especially when we're looking at these two forms to help kids, that some of the costs involved may be out of line with what we're trying to achieve. So it was really refreshing to go to the Autism Research Institute, which hosts the third questionnaire I was going to talk about. They have the ATEC, that is the Autism Treatment Evaluation Checklist, and that one's free. I'm going to go ahead and post the link to that on the event page tonight, Q&A with the doc on Facebook. The ATEC survey is something that can be, it was really designed to be used for pretty much exactly what I'm doing. A major obstacle on here describing the form, a major obstacle in autism research has been a lack of a valid means of measuring the effectiveness of various treatments. Over the years, researchers have published hundreds of studies attempting to evaluate different biomedical and psychoeducational interventions intended to benefit autistic children. Much of this research has produced inconclusive or worse, misleading results. Actually reflected in the original article that I found regarding the parents' measurements, they had mixed results using this questionnaire in particular, because there are no useful tests or scales designed to measure treatment effectiveness. Lacking such a scale, researchers have resorted to using scales such as the Child Autism Rating Scale, that's CARS, the Gilliam Autism Rating Scale, which is GARS, or the Autism Behavior Checklist, that's ABC, all of which were designed to diagnose autism, tell whether or not a child is autistic, and not to measure treatment effectiveness. 2 recent reviews have commented on the problem. Often, researchers have to use diagnostic instruments to measure changes in response to treatment. This approach has not been very successful because most diagnostic instruments are not sufficiently sensitive to changes within an individual. The second quote, measures of clinical improvement to validate treatment outcomes are even more seriously deficient. So they say that the ATEC was developed by Bernard Grimlin and Stephen M. Edelson of the Autism Research Institute to fill this need, which is especially urgent right now because of the 20 or more studies starting to soon evaluate a hormone called secretin, which is, we talked about biomedical treatments, one of the ways that they were using pharmacological interventions for autism spectrum disorder. It says the ATEC is a one-page form designed to be completed by parents, teachers, or caretakers. It consists of 4 subtests: speech-language communication, there's 14 items; sociability, which is 20 items; sensory or cognitive awareness, 18 items; and health, behavior, and physical, 25 items. Unlike most of the scales, it's not copyrighted and may be used free of charge by any researcher, which was music to my ears. Copies are available on request from the Autism Research Institute or at the ARI website. We can get these scored for free, all 4 subscores and a total score, by entering the response via computer to the ATEC web form, and immediate and free of cost scoring. I went to that and had a look to see what kind of information I'm trading for them in order for them to further their research. I identify myself as a researcher or a practitioner, put my own contact details in there, which I'm happy to do. The intervention being evaluated, actually chiropractic's not on here. And one of the things that they recommend is, in order to determine which treatment was responsible for any observable changes, please indicate the intervention I'm using. So that's something that I would have to actually put in myself. They have biomedical or non-drug therapies, education and training, and drugs. And honestly, by the time most kids get to my office, a lot of the parents have already tried a lot of these things. So I'm kind of getting my own baseline. They've already tried gluten-free, casein-free. They've tried specific carbohydrate diets. They've tried chelation. They've tried things like digestive enzymes, probiotics, some of the educational training things like speech therapy, sensory integration, neurofeedback. Some of them have occupational therapists. They've tried some of the drugs. And so I already have some of that kind of stuff in there for their research. I can write that up as a case history. Information specific to each person. They can indicate at what point in time am I starting this. They suggest every 2 weeks. Give them a baseline value for it. If they already have a diagnosis, I can indicate if they have autism, PDD, NOS, Asperger's, Landau, Kleffner syndrome, Rett syndrome, and then I can put in some of their information, just basic demographics, date of birth, age, male or female, identification codes, etc. And then the actual survey itself is really clear. It has, as I mentioned, just the items, and it's just a radio button. I click no, not true, as somewhat true, be very true for all the items. Go through it. It looks like it would take me about 10 minutes, so it'd probably be something that I would have my patients complete at home, usually a parent, so they can go through those things, and then I can kind of look to see where the results are on a regular basis, so we can keep track of those kinds of interventions. Yeah, so very, very happy to find that tool. Very grateful for my patients who have brought their kids in to see what chiropractic can do for them. We've had published studies on ASD and Asperger's and the effectiveness of chiropractic in working with that. And part of our postgraduate program with the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association deals with special needs populations. So it's going to be something that I know that I'm going to be using in the future too. Second question that I had to do with on the topic of special diets, gluten-free, casein-free diet, so having dairy allergies and wheat allergies. and what kind of things we can do for protein for growing kids. I've got a little boy who loves his smoothies, and his mom said, I don't know what else to make a smoothie with, because his dad's really focused on him making sure he gets the protein in his diet. And Erica and I have been experimenting a lot over the last 4 months, 5 months on different vegetable proteins to help out supplement our diet, because we tried going gluten-free. I've got an issue with dairy. I get all stuffy. A lot of my allergies are related to that. So I was curious too. I was like, I know that protein is an important part for my diet. I like having that in my system on a regular basis. What kind of things can I put in there to help me with my smoothies? And getting a toddler to eat spirulina can sometimes be a trick. You can sneak some of that stuff into the smoothies, especially the vegetable smoothies. It's already green, but color is such a big thing with a lot of kids. If you can make a green smoothie fun to eat, then that's good for you, bonus. But some of them will immediately react to that. So trying to find a neutral colored protein that tastes fine, maybe even doesn't have a taste, you can slip it in under the radar. Went and checked out a couple recipes. There's a really nice article on 5 ways to save money, dairy-free protein powder. I'm going to share this one on, it was actually like a vegan bodybuilding secret. It was on gluten-free, dairy-free .net, gfdf.net. And it said, go for a generic cheap protein powder. That one, as they were writing it, I have a little bit of a hard time just recommending off-the-shelf kinds of stuff for kids, because sometimes there's screwy things in it. So be a label reader, especially if we're looking at grains. We want to make sure that it's not grown with a lot of pesticides and garbage chemicals that you're going to be putting into your child's body. They had ideas of try creating your own homemade protein shakes out of vegetable protein. So let's kind of talk about what that is. We know that things like quinoa flour, teff flour, millet, you can grind that up. Vegetable proteins like soy. I'm not a huge fan of soy, but tempeh would be a way to do it, because then it's at least fermented. I don't have a problem giving children fermented foods, because I say go ahead and Satan, yeah, Satan's wheat-based, so that wouldn't work. I say give them probiotics all the time, so I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Wheat Satan-based?
Wheat is Satan-based. Eric is cracking jokes. We had our coffees before we came. What are the other ones? Oh, when we were on Friday nights, we like to go out to our local Indian restaurant, have a good feast, and they use a lot of chickpea flour, and that stuff's pretty good. It again would be a good protein, decent profile for somebody to take in. Although chickpeas may lead to a little bit of gastric stuff. So as always, experiment away. I'm going to put the link up for that one. But a lot of times we have this notion in our society that vegetables don't equal protein. And some of those vegetables are actually phenomenal sources of protein. If you think about a very simple analogy, so what do cows eat? Right? Cows out wandering out around the grass. They're eating all day. Nobody ever comes up to a cow and says, hey cow, where's your protein at? Right? I mean, they're vegetarians. They're eating grass. They're eating grains. They probably shouldn't be eating corn, right? But it's one of the simplest ways to think of that animals get their protein all the time. Nature provides that for the diet, and it's in there in just the amounts that they need. So yeah, if you're concerned about having a little one and you're starting to do things like smoothies to help supplement, because that's kind of like the breakfast go-to. A little bit of flaxseed oil, a little bit of some protein powders to help supplement, beef that diet up a little bit. I think would be absolutely fine. But yeah, there's other ways to do it than just grabbing the closest whey or soy just off the shelf. Last thing, and this got me fired up. I had um, a good friend of mine from back in Rockford that went back to got me back in my antibodies versus um, the other 7 arms of the immune system talks. She had her son had a reaction to the DTaP yesterday and was getting laser acupuncture done for his leg to help the fact that his leg swelled up 3 times the size. And she had a friend on Facebook blasting her for being unscientific in her decision to delay. And it always amazes me that people use that term, the unscientific, thinking that it just means that people haven't read the research coming out of the CDC or the National Institute of Health. Because I have yet another brilliant example of research that's come out from the NIH that completely misses the boat on a few things. This was posted by my friend Holly in a group that we have on Facebook. Midline Plus, which is a really convenient source of information. I used to get a lot of emails from them, little updates that led me into some of the stuff I used to push on Guerrilla Health Report. Came out of Reuters for health information. It says study finds mismatch between kids and vitamins. Came out a couple Fridays ago. And it said that there was a study that was done. I looked at more than 7,000 children. It found that between the ages of 9 and 18, most of those kids had low levels of certain vitamins and minerals, and few took supplements, while younger kids had adequate levels of most nutrients and were possibly getting too much of some vitamins and minerals. Most children under 8, for instance, got the nutrition they need from the food they ate, regardless of whether or not they took supplements, the study found. Even with the use of supplements, however, more than a third of children failed to get sufficient calcium and vitamin D, which are related. I'll talk to you about that in a second. And users sometimes overloaded on essential nutrients such as iron and vitamin A. Zinc and folate were consumed to excess across all groups. Now, Reagan Bailey, a nutritional epidemiologist at the NIH in Bethesda, who led the study, said, "We don't know if these excessive amounts cause any harm." This was published in the Journal of Pediatrics, and their conclusions were that the makers of children's vitamins should consider reformulating their products to better match kids' needs in modern diets. So here we go. Like I was writing the post, I hardly even know where to begin on this. I'm going to cover the calcium vitamin D issue first. Calcium gets absorbed into your body because of vitamin D. It is so intimately related, it's not even funny. I've got a news flash that vitamin D just doesn't come in cow's milk. It is the sunshine vitamin. Your body does naturally produce vitamin D. You just have to get the kids outside. Yeah, we're dealing with some ozone issues, right? But Mercola, I just heard him do another ad that is saying, look, get your kids off the games. Get them outside, get them playing. There are so many studies out there right now related to lower things like the things that parents are worried about, like my kid gets sick. Vitamin D is one of the best antivirals out there. It's a super antioxidant. It's involved in so many of the processes that your kids need to grow. Get them outside. Their body has to produce it naturally. It's going to interfere with their body's ability to take in calcium. Now, how many of those kids you suppose in the study are drinking their milk just the way that their parents tell them to, just the way the American Dairy Association tells them to? I'm willing to bet a lot of them are. And yet here they are with this deficiency, even though they're supplementing with milk rich in calcium and rich in vitamin D. I mean, how much more evidence do you need that this isn't working? Calcium is so much more bioavailable in plants. It comes in a different form. It's attached into the dairy protein, and anything that you would use in order to break that protein up gets killed in the pasteurization process. So your body can't pull it out of the protein anyway. So let's quit with the whole milk does the body the best. Let's start expanding our horizons a little bit when it comes to supplementation, into including, hey, let's eat real food. On that topic, I want you to pay really close attention to the ages involved here. They said that the children who were 8 years and younger, so that means kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, right? That those kids were usually doing pretty good when it came to the levels of things in their body. It was, now we're in 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade. What's happening there? School lunch. The U.S. government last year had on Capitol Hill a bill put out by the White House that said we need to reform what we're calling vegetables, what we're calling nutrition in our school lunch program. And there were items in there like considering pizza a vegetable, increasing the amount of actual vegetables that needed to be in pizza in order for that to qualify. And that measure was defeated by Congress, thanks to your food lobbies, who said, hey, listen, our kids are getting plenty of nutrition with food the way it is. I'll tell you, this is just one more nail in the coffin of that argument. Kids are not getting nutrition through the lunch programs that we're offering them. We need real help in this area. We need kids to be consuming real fruits and vegetables. I mean, if your kids are in a public or a private school and they're getting on the school lunch program, I highly encourage you to get involved in that program to find out what is it that they're feeding my child. I mean, ask any teacher in the world, any of them, about what happens after lunch. Eric up the kid, oh yeah, thanks Erica. Ugh, right? Student teaching, it was a nightmare. They get that big insulin spike, that huge crash everywhere. We're so carb-based. They aren't eating what they're supposed to be eating. There's like, these lunches are devoid of serious nutrition. What do you get with that lunch? Oh, here you go. Here's a carton of milk. I mean, we're causing inflammation left and right in these kids. We aren't giving them the options that their bodies need in order to be good and healthy and concentrate in school. We're not giving them the ability to have an immune system that's good and functional. And now it looks like we're malnourishing them too. I mean, if there's ever a time for an overhaul, let's do it now. Next thing was the comments about folate, and we don't know if these excessive amounts cause any harm. I've got a study that I'm going to go ahead and post, and nothing hits home to me like me blabbing off at the mouth about something and having a good friend of mine turn around and say, hey, look, actually, you're wrong. A couple years ago, I was really touting the whole, got to make sure you're doing your prenatal vitamins, got to make sure you're getting your folic acid, and I got called out on that one. There's research that's been done, a couple studies now, that have linked folic acid supplementation with certain types of cancer in women. And the theory on that is that folic acid isn't naturally found. Folate is. Folate is in your leafy greens, and I highly encourage, yes, take in the leafy greens, especially if you're pregnant. Go for those. But I challenge you to look for any prenatal vitamin that has folate listed as an ingredient. What the body does is it takes folic acid. Probably, I've asked supplement companies about why they're using it. It's probably really cheap to produce, and it's probably very shelf stable. But your body takes that folic acid, your liver has to convert it, and the metabolites from that conversion process have to get rid of somehow. So every single time you're taking folic acid in your body has to work extra hard in order to make the folate that it needs in order for cellular function to take place. So here we are supplementing with telling our expecting moms to supplement with folic acid. And then on top of that, it's been added to every enriched grain that we know of in our diet. So you're already getting adequate levels, which this study is saying, and then you're supplementing with it on top of that, and we're wondering, whether or not this is going to cause a problem. So you're asking your liver to work twice as hard to make something out, that's supposed to be natural out of something that's unnatural, and then it's an absolute surprise to us that we do have links with these kinds of things with cancer. You're creating toxins, your body's getting overloaded with them. What is your body's natural response to that? Okay. So we do know that these kinds of things do cause problems. I'm, I'll post a link to that study also, because it's one of those things that every researcher is asked to do a little bit of background check on some of these. And a nutritionist in the nutrition world, they should be aware of this. I'll tell you why. Because the pharmaceutical industry is aware of this. One of the drug companies that makes a birth control pill actually recently changed a formulation to help get on the you should be taking folate bandwagon. They changed one of the formulations of their birth control pill to include folate, and advertised it that, hey, when you're ready to go ahead and conceive, this way you already have this in your system. And it was kind of like a you almost get it moment, because when I looked up the actual formulation, I was like, I can't believe they actually put folate in this. It wasn't quite folate. It was a different metabolite. So it was like really close, but it showed me that those researchers are starting to discover that there is a difference in how the body uses folate versus folic acid. So I'm going to go ahead and put the links to the 3 articles that I talked about, autism.com. I'm going to put the link to the protein powder. I'm going to put the link to the folic acid versus folate argument up there. If you have questions, please go ahead and send me a personal message on Facebook. Go ahead, it's Mama's Chiropractic. You can search for that and personal message me. We do a couple things here locally associated with Pathways to Family Wellness magazine, the Pathways Connect Southwest Florida chapter that meets once a month at the end of every month at 6 p.m. And this month we're going to be having Sayer G from greenmid.info talking about formula, what's in your formula, and about raw milk. And we're also doing the 5 Talks with Your Doc. That happens once a month. We just finished up our 5-part series, so we're going to be starting that again in August. Just a couple things to be on the lookout for out there in internet land. But if you want to connect with real live people, I invite you to go ahead and check out the Pathways Connect group in your area. Again, my name is Dr. John Edwards from Mama's Chiropractic in Cape Coral. It was a pleasure talking with you today, and hit me up if you have any questions. Hope you have a great weekend.